Hopefully this will show up. It says it's live. Let's see if it's live now. May not show. Oh, yep, it is there. All right, now I got to mute that because I'm looking at myself. Cool. Awesome. All right. Nate, it's good to see you, brother. And Radical Love, almost called you by your real name. Trying to keep it real with the other names. Oh, good. Perfect timing. Perfect timing. I see Radical Love is back. Awesome. So basically what I was going to cover tonight, everybody, all three of us, is, hey, don't forget, by the way, everybody, to hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. I was going to cover a few things pertaining to some radical kind of skepticism that I've been seeing a lot lately of. And I was telling Radical Love on here that it's been a rough, you can hear. Oh, by the way, Radical Love, is the audio better this time? Let me see if it's better, or anyone that hears me. I notice that you can hear, so I'm hoping that it is better. Let me know. I've taken the microphone, this one, out of the system. And so I don't know if you can see that in the camera. And I think that was the cause of the problem. Yeah. All right. Awesome. Good. So I'm just using the camera mic now. So that is awesome. 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 Oh, I'm sorry about the scratches. That might be the fan, or it's the computer or a loose wire. Yeah. The system that I'm running here is going through an audio interface. And so because this is a recording studio as well for us. So the audio interface may be going bad, and that might be the cause of part of the problem. But anyway, so I'm going to pray real quick, and then I'm going to jump right into what's going on here. So, dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much. Dad, we thank you for this beautiful day and for our guests here tonight, two friends of Erica and mine, whom we just absolutely love and enjoy spending time talking to online, Father. Please bless this evening and anyone else that joins us, Father. Help us to have a great time and to learn something new, as well as to just, have some great fellowship, Father. Please bless it and help me to focus tonight, Father, and to honor you in all things, to honor Lord Jesus Christ as well, in the power of the Holy Spirit. And in Jesus' precious, powerful, and heavenly name I pray. Amen. Okay. Erica's moderating Radical Love. She may come in the room. She's also going to be, I think she's coming in. Since I jumped on a few minutes early because Nate's got to go, she'll catch this in a second. I think she thinks I'm still starting at 9. So she will be joining us either through the chat or live in here. I'm not sure which. Hopefully live. I went on to, I don't know if I should say where I went. I went on to a fellow friend apologist. We talk, Eric Hernandez's page this week. He had just posted up a video, and it was a conversation on there that I got in, and things went downhill pretty quick. The individual, there's the dog. Let me shut the door. The individual that I was talking to got pretty ridiculous pretty quick. Watch my language. No, you're fine. And I was really, I didn't know what to do, honestly. I mean, it went from bad to worse in about 100 miles an hour. I mean, it just was just instantaneously ridiculous. And some of it was skepticism. So I want to share a little of that tonight and then talk about how to deal with some of this, because all of us deal with this. And then I also want to talk about an issue pertaining to something that somebody brought up I think it was on Vocab's channel. I was dialoguing with somebody on there, and it actually fits with the, hey, you joining us? There she is. It'll show up on there in just a second. There's a little bit of a delay.
So. To get the computer to help you out.
Okay, I gotcha.
You got something here.
So
let me go take care of the children.
Okay, you coming back?
You want me to come back?
Yeah.
If everybody's doing good, I'd love to join you.
Okay, I'm sure the others will watch Chris if he's, that's the baby fussing in the background wanting mama.
Hopefully I can come back and join you.
Okay, so anyway, the skepticism, I'll read a few of the comments. I don't want to embarrass the guy, so I've taken his name off. the thing that bothered me really wasn't the fact that he didn't agree with me and the other gentleman. I didn't care about that one bit. What I cared about, what bothered me, was the sort of sophistry or the intellectual dishonesty. He was quoting both myself and another person in the chat out of context and or just being incredibly rude. I don't know how else to put it. A lot of what we call ad hominem abusives, which are personal attacks. And so at some point I should have just taken Solomon's advice and not answered a fool according to his folly. But I was trying to help the guy out, and that's where it went wrong. And so it was just a really bad situation. But there was some good things that came out of it, being that there's some things we can learn from the situation. So I'll jump into that. I don't know, everybody, if I can share the comments with you. I'm going to try. Not entirely sure how to do that. Looks like through the screen share thing here. Okay, good. Hopefully that's the right one. All right, so you guys will see. Yep, in just a second. There you go. This document. Hopefully I can end up taking it back off the screen. But if you look at the very top of the document there, the very first thing it says is, there is no definitional authority. I need no academic resource to define determinism. Determinism is commonly defined as I've already stated. Now, this determinism is not the kind of determinism which we would refer to in Calvinism and whatnot. In terms of, you know, whether we're free will in that sense or determined in terms of our salvation. This is coming from an atheistic perspective, and it had to do with the debate that Eric was having with an atheist. So this is how it sort of got started in the chat. Now, the irony was when I said, could you give me a definition that you're using for determinism? He said, nope, I don't have to. The one I'm using is accepted. What I was asking for was an academic definition, because the definition he was using didn't match any of the other ones I was familiar with, because the way he was stating it, generally the way you'll see determinism stated is either you are causally free or you're determined. I could care less what position anyone holds. That's irrelevant to me right now. What was the problem was when you had this sort of statement occurring whereby the individual wanted to say that you're either causally determined or basically you're causally determined. I was like, well, no, that's begging the question. You can't do that. I said, could you give me a different definition? So, of course, I couldn't get him to give it. First, he's insulting me and throwing all manner of, you know, ad hominems out there. Finally, he gives a different definition, and then says, well, the problem is definitions don't have any authority. So I'll go back to the whoops. Here we go. To the document here, and you'll see it. There's no definitional authority here, so I need no academic resource. I was asking for an academic one because I tend not to count Wikipedia or some other random resource, because it's pointless to use something whereby you can't trust the source. Now, when I had asked him for it, I asked him for a academic or an academic resource. And that turned into a whole other argument in and of itself. And he had a meltdown over that you know, he doesn't have to provide one, and that I think that there's some sort of absolute academic resource, despite the fact that I'm asking him for just one. I don't care. It's just academic, so that we can sort of start from somewhere. In other words, we're barely getting started so far. Now, this probably sounds familiar to most of you. I know all of you have dealt with this sort of thing, either on Vocab's channel or for Eric and I, you know, ourselves. So this shouldn't come as any surprise. But what was ironic is then he says, there's no definitional authority. Now notice this here, but my definition is correct. Okay, it's defined as I've stated. Now there's a problem with that. So there's no authority, but I'm right. Well, that's self-defeating. Now, granted, he would argue, I never said that. You're right. I'm restating it so that you can see the illogical, ramifications of the position, which is, perfectly legitimate to do. That's not straw manning somebody's argument, which is another accusation I received later on. So I tried to show him this, that, look, here's the problem. Your definition is that there's no definitional authority, which would mean that your definition of definitions is not an authority either, and can be ignored as well. And so you can see it's what we would call in philosophy a self-referentially incoherent statement, which is a fancy way of saying it's self-defeating. Okay, so yeah, factual, yeah. So and that's the other thing, is that his version of factual evidence, I just saw Radical Love mentioning factual evidence, is he's going to also say, well, you haven't provided any evidence, because he won't count argumentation as a form of evidence. And this is also very common that we see from skeptics. They want to say, well, the only evidence is empirical, meaning, physical, I can touch it. These are glasses because, I could see that they're glasses. And they won't count argumentation as evidence, which is simply not true. Okay, so typically when you see this sort of thing, don't be discouraged. The best thing that I would always recommend for everyone to do is to try to restate, either write it down, which always helps me, and look at the argument and restate it. First thing I always try to figure out is, does this statement, can it support itself? In other words, if I hold the statement at the same criteria that it's proposing, does it support itself, or would it fall under the weight of its own statement? Now, an easy way to do that, actually, to figure out, is anytime a statement is generally all of X are this, that's going to be something I'm suspicious of. What do I mean by that? All dogs are lazy. I'm going to be suspicious of that statement. Okay, now that won't make for a self-referentially incoherent statement. But very seldom in life do we have things like that, where all are something. Okay, all rocks are hard. Well, depends on what you define as a rock, right? And same thing when you go to ask a question like, well, how are you defining that? I got the same thing. Well, what are you, an idiot? Or what, you don't know how to define that? You don't know what the definition of that is? Well, no, I want to be clear on what it is we're talking about, which is another good technique to use when you're trying to get to the bottom of a discussion. Again, for chat rooms, this is really hard to do, particularly like on a side chat, because it's going so fast. Like on vocabs last night, I was getting a headache trying to read. Everything was just flying by. So Radical Love says, yeah, it's like being a lawyer seeking the truth backed up by fact and evidence. That's exactly right, Radical Love. And in fact, a lot of point is that a lot of what we use in logic, we also use in law. Those two draw from one another a lot. And that's exactly right. And so, yeah, with statements like that. Now, it got worse because the definitions were self-defeating, his definition of definitions, and he sort of did the same thing with assertions. He asserted that assertions have no merit or something like that. Well, that's not exactly what he said. So to be fair to the individual, that's not exactly what he said. I'm paraphrasing him there. Let me see if I can find it. All assertions are just opinion and cannot prove anything, right? And you could even take it further to say, that's, again, not a direct quote, I'm summarizing him here, to say all assertions are just opinion and cannot prove anything, whether anything is or is not correct. Well, if somebody's stating and showing you where you have gone wrong as an assertion, and it carries no weight, then nothing can prove your position wrong. You see how that works? This is where people try to sort of move the goalpost, or they're sometimes playing with what I would call loaded dice, meaning that they try to set the burden of proof or the evidential benchmark so high that there's no way you can prove your position. And so this is another thing that we ought to be wary of when you see this sort of thing. Again, notice the all or never type of language. Once again, that's generally a good indication. With people who work in philosophy, and I am not a philosopher yet, hope to be one day, studying philosophy right now, and more theology. Okay, you're generally seldom going to see that type of language, all or none, or in that sort of absolute language. So when you see it, it's generally a good indication that there's probably something wrong. Now, yeah, there are some things where there are absolutes, okay? But the difference being that, for instance, the statement "there are no absolutes" is an absolute statement and is self-referentially incoherent, self-defeating, right? And this is the precursor to the idea there's no absolutes. Is the precursor to postmodernism of sorts. And I'll get into that in another discussion, I suppose. But so going back to the assertions, this is a very clever way of avoiding the weight of your opponent's position, but it is self-defeating, and it would look like this. The problem is that your assertion is an assertion and would fall under the same criteria, making it self-defeating, right? So in other words, all assertions are just opinion, cannot prove anything, which is itself an assertion, therefore it can't prove itself. Now, sometimes people will cry foul on this, but even philosophers would say, yeah, for most things like that, that's perfectly legitimate. So crying foul for something like that isn't going to work. So Radical Love asked, through what university? Eric and I are going to, that's a good question. Trinity, College of the Bible, and I'm trying to think if they say theological seminary or what. It's just maybe if Erica can find the link to Trinity, or if I can, I will post it in the chat. I think the URL is just Trinity Sem. And the reason I'm putting it up is I love it there. I will tell you that it is one of the few colleges I've been to, and I've got 10 years of college, that I've got it. Erica, I've got it. Pumpkin, let me see if that should do it. It's just a wonderful college. A lot of the so Braxton Hunter is current president right now, who some folks may know. He's an apologist, fairly well known. Leighton Flowers is another one. Now, I like Leighton. He's a very nice guy, and even if you disagree with him in his position in terms of not being a Calvinist, he's still a great guy and a great theologian. So that's just, I really like the college. There's other professors there. My current one for my philosophy courses is awesome. Professor Russell, for the life of me, I can't think of his last name right now. That's embarrassing. It'll come to me later anyway. But so it's a great college. And what I love about it is everything is very very apologetic focused. Most of the degrees are interdisciplinary, so it's going to be apologetics and theology, apologetics, and philosophy. I'm doing an interdisciplinary degree in 3 fields: apologetics, theology, and philosophy. So I had to take the largest course load, which is 18 classes. Russell Crawford is the name of the professor there that I couldn't remember. Awesome guy. Yeah, I'll tell you this, Radical Love. If you've been thinking of going, they have certificates as well as the degree programs. But in addition to that, they are extremely affordable. They've allowed Eric and I to do a payment plan. They are awesome. They're very reasonable. The most reasonable that I've seen. It's all online. I just absolutely can't say enough good stuff about it. As long as you don't mind reading a lot. Well, that's for the graduate level courses. I don't know about for the undergrad, but yeah, great college. So anyway, and one other thing too is that they hire professors from a broad background. So what's cool is that they're not all only Baptist or all only this or all only that. They do hire guys, as far as I know, that are only Orthodox. I don't think they have any Catholic professors, so I'm sorry if there's anyone out there who's Catholic. My soon-to-be stepfather is ironically Catholic, who teaches at a Catholic seminary, which is super cool to me. We may disagree on doctrine, but I like the guy. I think he's pretty cool. And my father's Anglican, so I'm sort of used to having mixed points of views in the family on theology. That's why I generally try not to plant my flag in the ground and argue with people too much. Not because they may not be wrong, but because I don't want to be divisive. In other words, I can have a disagreement with them and still be cool about it, or still be kind. And that's where I think Christian to Christians we go wrong, but also obviously, no, I mean, that's the big part. I think Christians are very, very nice to atheists most of the time, which is good. I think we should be nice to everyone. So, I don't want anyone to misunderstand me when I say, oh, that's okay, when I'm talking about a opposing point of view. What I'm not saying is that I necessarily agree with the person, but what I am saying is that I'm not going to fight with them over it, because I found that rarely, if ever, changes anyone's point of view on anything. And so you do pay a high price sometimes, like the experience I had with this gentleman who continually insulted me for a day and a half. But, it is what it is. There was one last thing I wanted to note on that about theology and Christians and whatnot. Hopefully the thought will come back to me. But anyway, kind of getting back into it. So, so with these statements, we see that the individual wants to sort of hold very, very strong beliefs that he doesn't need a definition, and if we don't need definitions whereby there's no definitional authority, we might as well throw out dictionaries, right? And this is what I try to explain to him. If there's no definitional authority, not one absolute authority, which is what he was trying to claim I was saying, but no definitional authority whatsoever, then we might as well burn all dictionaries and just destroy anything that makes a claim to anything. Now, he wouldn't go that far with his statements as to how skeptical he was being, but I suspected that's where he was going with it. I tried to point that out a few times. And at one point, I finally realized when another gentleman was saying the same thing, you're quoting me out of context, you're being intentionally deceptive, that, oh, this guy's doing this to everyone. So I realized, because for a while I was questioning my sanity, which for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, that's known as gaslighting. Somebody tries to make you think you're crazy. Not that I'm sane altogether, but you want to be careful of that. I think for Christians, we take stuff like accusations like that personal, because generally speaking, we try to be fair and honest about our position when we're representing it, which we should be. But when somebody's telling you, over and over again that you're lying or whatever, that's a good indication that you probably ought to stop the conversation. So that's basically all I want to say about that one, I think. Let me just check to make sure if there was one more thing on the document. I'm not going to rehash the whole conversation unless you guys want to hear it, because it was just bizarre. But there was one final point, and I'll read right from his position here, which says that, let me see here. I determine which course of action to take and could be taking the reasons into account, which means the course of, now, so that was somebody else's statement. Now he's commenting on it, which means the course of action was determined by reasons, okay, which would make it random. And by definition, you have no control over it. Now notice that, okay? In other words, you're not in control of your own things. If you're not in control, it's either you're in control or you're determined. It's not, you're either freely choosing, which is the other guy he was arguing with was making a different argument for the same position, that you either have freedom or you're causally determined. And what this gentleman was saying, no, you're basically just determined or you're determined. He didn't want to admit that that was a statement, and no matter how you tried to show it, he was going to deny it. What was even more interesting was this. He then went on to say, again, either your behaviors are determined by reasons or they are random. I'm quoting him directly. Either way, neither option is free will. Nothing you stated refutes this fact. Now he's talking directly to me. So then, now his last statement to me was, how about you try addressing the actual argument and stop pretending I ever defined determinism with randomness. And notice, let me read the prior statement. Either your behaviors are determined by reasons or they are random. So is that part of his definition? Yes. And it was the same in the other statement. And I'm going, wow, maybe he forgot, except I kept trying to explain to him, you said this, and I kept quoting him. This was 5 or 6 hours of insanity on my part, and I should have learned my lesson, right? So my bad. But this was continual, and it was frustrating. And, people will do this sometimes. They're just intentionally being dishonest. Being dishonest. And to the point, the other gentleman even said to him, I'm betting you're a troll. And I went, oh, of course he's a troll. That makes perfect sense. He's just saying whatever at this point. Like I said, he's being insulting, throwing out ad hominems. He would try to accuse the other gentleman of things and then accusing me of logical fallacies that I didn't commit. I just didn't understand how the things worked. So, and a lot of the other arguments were like that as well. Now, one tool I would recommend all of you learning to do, though you don't have to, because you may think, well, that logic stuff, Sean, that's for you and for John over at What Do You Mean, and for IP, Inspiring Philosophy, and Erica and Dr. William Lane Craig, and notice I put all of us in the same category as Dr. William Lane Craig, and for Eric Hernandez and whoever else. No, actually, simple basic logic is actually really useful because it allows us to make distinctions between things. So an example of this is trying to take any claim and turn it into an if-then statement. Okay, so Erica, if you can give me a claim that I can use to make a syllogism out of in the comment section, that would be helpful, because if I try to do it, it won't make any sense because my brain will want to pick something that doesn't work, and then I make it harder on myself than I need to. So Radical Love asks, so do you try to find a common ground to define certain terms? Excellent question. To try to make progress in the conversation. Yes, as a matter of fact, Radical Love, that's what I tried to do, and that's why I kept getting insulted. That's why he refused. He said there's no definitional authority, because he wouldn't agree with my definition and I didn't agree with his. And I said, so then let's pick one. I don't care what it is, just give me a authoritative definition. I don't care, just make it academic. Don't use Wikipedia. That was the only thing I mentioned by name. That doesn't count. Anyone that's been to college recently within the last probably 10 years will tell you that most colleges won't accept that. It's not academic. And the guy refused to, and I knew right away why he was refusing to, was because he didn't know where to find one. Now he eventually probably typed in determinism, and the first thing that came up was the Society for Evangelical. I'm sorry. Was it SEP? EP? No, it was SEP. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Sorry. And so we were working from there, and then I kept saying that the definition here doesn't include randomness, and that's why his comments were, I never said randomness, even though he said it 2 or 3 times. And just kept reasserting it, and then blamed it on somebody else. Well, that's somebody else's definition, or somebody else was saying that, not me. Okay, buddy. So that's what I was trying to do, and that should have immediately, when he started insulting me by asking for the definitions, insulting my intelligence, I should have known just to quit talking to him. But foolishly, I kept thinking, well, I want to have an intellectual conversation with this guy, and I want to try to help him to understand, and I want to try to understand it. And realizing foolishly that was not what he was in it for. He was just in it to try to prove how smart he was, which is what he just kept asserting, how dumb everyone else was. So by default, how smart he was. Oh, yeah, no problem, Radical Love. I'm honored that you think that. Yeah, I actually keep, and I think I told you all this before, my little black book handy, and then when I get a good note, I'll put it in there. Okay, yeah, great, Erica. Erica's going to try to join me in person. So what I do with this notebook, though, is I take notes, usually in a larger notebook. So this one is on, what's this one on? The Trinity. And then, so that's what it'll look like. So I'll take notes on that. And then what I'll do is I will condense that down. And then I will, after condensing it down, just the key elements, then I'll put those in the in this little one. So that way I can have that for access. And again, it's not to slay people with. I'm not trying to win arguments. I'm trying to win people to Christ. That's the irony, is this guy just wanted to win an argument. And I'm sure, to be fair to him, that we were talking past one another. I thought at one point, well, surely we're just talking past one another. I've misunderstood him. He's misunderstood me. And we're going right past one another at 100 miles an hour. Yeah, I think you're right, Radical Love. Most people try to make others feel less than themselves to make them seem more intelligent. Yep. Yeah, I agree. And it's really unfortunate. And generally, guys, and generally the men and women I've gotten to study under or have worked with in academics don't speak in such, I'm absolutely right all the time, and I don't need to give definition terms. In fact, the more I work in theology and other fields, more recently, the more I'm studying in philosophy, the more I realize how little I know. So when you get somebody like that online who just claims to have all knowledge, that should be a great indication that they probably don't have a clue. No, I try not to throw that in their face, because that's not going to win any friends, so to speak. But essentially, that is the case. So, all right, moving on to the next one I wanted to talk about. I don't know if Nate's still here or not. I know he has to go soon. So this next one was interesting because it came from. Let me know if you see my Bible. Oh,
can you use this one?
No,
Oh, there's another over here.
Yeah,
There you go.
thanks. So I'm going to be using the ESV here, everybody, but just know that I'm not going to put this all up on my. Well, maybe I can. Maybe I can. I found out how to use that. So let me see if I can screen share Logos. I think I have it open. I just need to pull it up, everyone. So if you don't mind, give me a second. And what's cool is then you'll be able to see the Bible too. Or the Bible I'm looking at.
You're getting good at this.
Thanks. I'm trying. Yeah, the audio is a lot better.
It was so much better last time. What did you do different today?
Just the camera, no microphone, and I'm using a different. I'm not using the OBS or the. Okay. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Cool. Anything you wanted to comment on any of this? Because you have a lot of experience. Erica's really, I think, going to end up being the apologist, guys.
Yeah, we're talking about apologetics.
Go ahead.
Today, right?
Yeah.
So yes, many of the things you have been saying actually. So you say, "This is what I mean," and the person you're talking to will say, "No, what you really mean is this." I said, "No, I told you this is what I'm talking about." They said, "No, this is what you're saying."
Yeah.
And yes, so that tend to happen often. What was the other thing I was really relating to you about? More things, but hearing your experience, I noticed many similar things, and I do think that most of these people you encounter online don't really. I don't want to be offensive. I don't mean to challenge anybody's intellect really, but it gave me the impression that, just like you were saying, that they're just reading off whatever they find without really holding to it themselves. So they seem to be looking at something that says, just Google it and just look up, oh, this looks good, this seems to support my opinion. Because the reason I think that it's because the article that they point me to, they just tend to say, look at this article, stuff like that. If you look at it, it kind of contradicts within itself, or with another article the same person will send to you. So
or the article that they're quoting isn't saying what they think it's saying.
Yes,
you remember that one? Sorry.
Yes, but here's the thing: you also want to be courteous and not really, go, oh, you're contradicting yourself, therefore you are not worth my time. Not like that, but more. I always try to be polite, and I don't know. I'm not the necessary authority to do this, but I feel like just picking on them doesn't. Sometimes pointing that out is just what they need to say. Hey, your opinion contradicts itself. You might want to rethink your position. That might be what the person you're talking to needs. But sometimes the person doesn't have that strong of an opinion, that they just want to be hard, or they just are venting. I think it helps to kind of distinguish that, recognize why the person is saying what he or she is saying.
Yeah. And Radical Love asked a great question, which is, how can you tell if you were just understanding it wrong from the context? And so generally what happens is people tend to read in haste, and honestly, it's just as simple as that, Radical Love. And I'll answer your second question you just typed in just a second, and then Erica, I'm gonna let her take a poke at that one too. But what I find and what Erica found is we read the whole article, the one I'm thinking of and she's thinking of. It was on
by the 2 PhDs.
Yeah, by 2 PhDs.
Not just one, 2 people.
And they were smart. They did not declaratively say this is the case. They titled the thing one thing, but then their conclusion at the end didn't support the title because they're not dumb. They knew they're 2 atheistic, I think, scientists, and they were trying to say, or PhDs, students of some kind, and they were making the claim that not the was it the ontological argument? Teleological argument wasn't as strong as it claims to be. So some atheist was using this as fodder to prove that it's not, by saying it was speculative, not realizing that what the word speculative means. I think, was that the exact word he used, speculative?
I think it's something like that. Yeah, they want to say that the teleological argument is totally.
The word they used was, I think,
yeah.
was speculative. Now,
I think
what,
so. Something like that.
right. And I liked this atheist. We both Eric and I did. We enjoyed talking to him for the most part. But the problem with the article was that speculative meant this. The word that the authors used, it might have been a different word, meant the same thing as hypothesis. Well, guess what? Yeah. In other words, it's a hypothesis.
I think hypothesis is what
it's an inference.
What they came up with. At the end of this article, here's the thing: they say, well, it is maybe the world was created by design, but it was not most likely not God or something.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Indeed.
Right. So what else is powerful enough and smart enough
so,
and
so
outside of creation? Yeah. Now that's a great question. Radical Love's making some great points here. Is that definitions are critical. That that's why what I'll tend to do, and I'll give you a victory on this one too, on definitions. And they're not always seen the same. And that John had somebody on his channel whereby the guy was saying that it was when John, what do you mean, was doing his series on slavery, the Bible and slavery. There's a gentleman that got on there and he was saying, let me see if I can find his original argument. I've got it on my desktop somewhere here. Most Christians believe the Bible to be divinely inspired. Divinely inspired is usually meant to suggest that it can be taken as on authority, on morality from an infallible God. Divinely inspired usually suggests that we can believe whatever is written and was directed by an infallible God, so should not be false or contradictory. If the Bible has errors or contradictions, that suggests that it is not divinely inspired. The Bible has moral and factual errors or contradictions. Therefore, or in conclusion, the Bible is the work of fallible men and not the work of an infallible God. Now, here was the irony. First I said, well, is this what you're saying? And I posed at first I asked him, can I dialogue with you? Do you mind? And he said, no, by all means. He goes, I'm going to be hit or miss. I said, oh, that's fine, no problem. So I wrote out an argument. I said, is this what you're saying? And this gentleman was like, no. And then he gave the argument that I just read. Because he's being cordial, I'm going to be cordial. I'm going to give him everything I can to help him out. So I said, well, okay, hold on a second here. Now, I could have pointed out the logical issues, but I was like, no, I don't need to do that because I know where we're going wrong. This is why we're doing a video soon on this topic. I said, when you say, for the first premise, most Christians believe the Bible to be divinely inspired, what do you mean by inspired? And he went to something to that effect, and he went, oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean it to mean that when God gave it to man, he literally spoke every word. Theos Neustos, God breathed. But I said, well, so this is going back and forth. I said, you mean like dictation? He said, yes, exactly. We had a great conversation. So I said, watch this video first, please, before we go any further, because I want you to understand that while your position is not unusual, I was raised to believe that. That is not what most academics believe in theology. And I don't want you to think that what did I say to him? I don't want you to think that I'm making it up when I respond to you. I want you to see that it is held by other scholars. And I haven't heard from him since, but he might have lost. Like I had to try to find our conversation. I couldn't find it. It took me forever because I have his name. I was able to type the name and it showed up, and I didn't see him posting anything new, which I should get a notification for. But that was a success story. Why? Because I said, well, wait a minute. When you say this, what do you mean by it? So what do you mean? Right? That's
a good question to ask when you want to dialogue with somebody, especially online. There could be lots of misunderstanding.
Yeah, exactly. And so definitions are critical. And as far as, I don't know if I answered Radical Love's question about how can you tell if you're just understanding it wrong from the context. What I'd say is read it thoughtfully, read it over and over again. And what I generally do is if it's just a short quotation, I'll bracket what I'm reading before and after the direct quotation. But this was a short paper. It was like a blog. So I think Eric and I read it a few times. Now the benefit we have is she'll ask me to read something and I'll take a look to see if we're understanding the same thing. That is another fantastic resource. So Radical Love, if you have somebody, your daughter can take a look at something too. If you're trying to understand, if you're understanding it the right way, you know, if you're moderating on a channel, you can ask one of the other moderators, hey, can you take a look at this, what this guy said too? Is this right?
Faith Life community.
Or our Faith Life community. If anyone watching this after the fact, you guys are more than welcome on there. And no, another great question. Man, Radical Love, you got tons of good questions tonight. Yeah. So the question is, do you always agree with the scholars or professors? Not always. And so I won't just say, because the scholar said it, it must be true. You'd be surprised. Scholars and academics generally have good reasons for holding what they do, but sometimes they're bad about explaining it. They don't give the background. And so what happens is people reading it get confused. They don't understand, why is this academic posing this problem that people get confused all the time about what Mike Heiser says. Wonderful academic, great guy. Don't know him personally, but all the studying I've done of his is, I agree with a lot of it. Now, I don't agree with everything he says. I don't. And guess what? He doesn't have a clue who I am. So that's not hurting his reputation. And B, he wouldn't agree with everything I say. And if I had to put stock in who's probably more correct most of the time, it would be him, because he's got more time in grade. You know, he spent more time studying these things. But there are some issues when I come across and I go, no, I don't think that's right. Then what Eric and I will do is, first thing I do is I read it over and over. Second thing I'll do is I'll check to make sure if it's one verse, I read the whole chapter, because I want to get the context. Context is king, particularly when we're talking about Bible passages. I realize I'm sort of diverting off topic a little bit, but why not? Then the last thing I do is go to scholars. That's the last thing, or commentaries. I don't do that first, and I don't go to the internet first. Then I look at the words. You can use a concordance or online Bible dictionary, whatever. Yeah, no, that's smart. Radical Love says they don't blindly follow anyone, so to speak, and that's smart. Personal stance. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then what I'll tend to do is ask Erica, what are you getting out of this? What do you see? Or sometimes she'll do that for me. And I mean, I can't be more blessed than to have my wife as my study partner. And I'm just tremendously blessed by that, because we can sit in here in the office and talk about all these things all the time. And this last week hasn't been as good because I've been schoolwork.
Some weeks are like that. We'll pick right back up.
Yep. But you know, it's nice to have. So again, same thing. If you all want us to take a look at something, we're happy to. I love doing it.
And you also do it with your friend.
Yep. Now, see, I'm fortunate that I've got a pretty good friend in Eric Hernandez, and so we'll talk about stuff. I'm trying to get other guys from the community to get on our Faith Life page. I've invited some of them. I won't say who they are. John. But specifically, I'm trying to keep it fairly small just for that reason, so we can all get on there. And it's what the intent of our Faith Life community is, to be a place for all of us to share ideas, and to not be afraid to get it wrong, or to talk about things, and not
safe place, right?
Yeah, and not to feel like you got to be ostracized for having a different opinion than somebody else. But that we can still push back on one another and say, well, why do you hold that? I mean, okay. And one other thing too is that we made that community for you guys to be a sort of, I don't want to say chill space, but a place where you can go and just check out videos and do things. And that's right, Radical Love, iron sharpens iron. And sort of like a place where, like, let's say Vocab wanted to be on there, and John from What Do You Mean, and whoever, is a place where they can just go hang out and chill and not have to be the guy who's answering all the questions. And so that was more or less the idea. But anyone, folks that are moderating, not moderating, whatever, but eventually I'm going to cap it at a certain size. And then I would encourage somebody else to start a similar group and do the same thing. It doesn't matter who's in the group. It only matters that, as Radical Love said, iron sharpening iron, right. And that we're sort of working as a community together. But yeah, so hopefully that answered the question. If it didn't, Radical Love is in terms of, because you asked a lot of good ones there about definitions and
Radical Love is awesome.
Yeah, Now, well, I'll have to do another video on exegesis and on how to interpret passages and whatnot.
Bible study method
Bible
series?
study method series. I put it off because it did so badly. I thought nobody wants to watch this. So
we thought maybe people want apologetics more because that was getting more feedback.
Yeah, more views.
If you want to learn Bible study method, we are all about making the videos that helps you. So, and it's a basic skill.
Yeah. So and if the other person is missing the meaning, okay, I understand what you're asking. So Radical Love's saying, if what if what they're referring to is, what if the other person is missing the meaning? Well, that can be hard, because one of the things I'll tend to do is that's where I will go to an academic resource. I'm not going to use Wikipedia or your online dictionary.
Blogger.
Yeah, or a blogger. Not using that. So what should we be asking the person? I got you. So if they're missing the meaning, what I would do is I would again ask him more questions. So I would say, it would depend on how you mean that. And there you go, because I don't understand what you mean by what you're asking. So I would say, depend on how you mean that. In other words, Radical Love, when you ask, if the other person is missing the meaning, are you intending to say that you're having a conversation with them and you're talking about a specific word that you're trying to define and they're missing the meaning of the word, or is it more of they're missing the meaning of a sentence? Now, in my question, what I did there is I separated, I parsed out the area. So I said, okay, I started putting things in categories. That's one way to clarify things. In philosophy and in its sub-disciplines, that's one thing that it does very well, is it puts things in different categories. So sometimes people will hear the expression, you're making a category error, because people are overworking in the wrong category. So that's one way to start picking apart and teasing apart, figuring out where they're going wrong. You may need to narrow the focus. You just sort of start narrowing the questions down into a specific area. Greg Kokel's got a great book on this, but I'll try to come up with some more stuff if you're really interested, and do a video on it, because you're asking some really good, thoughtful questions. Okay, ask questions. Well, what kind of questions? Now, you read the book. What kind of questions are some good questions?
I was actually thinking about that exact book too, but just like you said, what do you mean by that is actually a very basic question he likes to ask. So I'm trying to remember if there's any other question he was posing, but it's been a bit a while ever since I read the book and started reading other materials.
We read a
I really
lot.
remember the exact phrase, but maybe we'll do a video. This is apologetics questions to ask kind of thing, right? Yeah, we can definitely come up with a list if you're interested.
I would always say, go ahead.
Or maybe, why do you hold that kind of stuff?
Yeah, now that would be if you understand one another. I would say they say, I'm a International House of Pancakes Buddhist, and you'd be like, oh, okay, why do you hold that, right? It's just sort of a bizarre position. That would probably be a, what do you mean by that kind of question? Let's take that statement. I'm an International House of Pancakes Buddhist, right?
Okay. Do I want to ask you a question?
Right. So here, we might want to say, well, okay, this guy's not being deceptive. We're assuming he's not pulling our leg, but seems to be missing the conversation. Then I would start honing in on where is this going wrong. I might say something like, when you say International House of Pancakes, you actually mean the restaurant? And the person say, yeah, that's what I mean. And when you say Buddhist, you mean like the sort of, religion, right? I mean, if I can put it in that category. Yeah, that's what I mean. So notice I've taken two categories there. Okay, I understand them. Then I need to figure out how in the world do these two categories function together? How is this going to make any sense whatsoever? Why should I take this to be, anything that would make any sense? Now, in the case, I know what Radical Love's asking is it's inverted, whereby I'm trying to explain to International House of Pancakes Buddhists that that's probably not a religion. But yes, that's exactly right. Just start breaking down terms is what Radical Love says. And that's where you're generally going to find clarification. Think terms, break down terms and categories, because the more you do that, anything else
that's good.
Yeah. That's good. Then that can help a lot. I'm trying to think of a conversation I had where like the conversation I had over the last day and a half, the problem there is the gentleman was just being really, really rude, and every time I'd ask a question, he'd just be insulting and call me an idiot or something because I didn't know the answer to the question.
That could happen.
Which, if you're getting that, just walk away. That's you're not going to get anywhere with somebody doing that.
Have you asked how did you come to that conclusion?
No, you're asking good questions, Radical Love. Don't be sorry.
No, don't sorry. Be sorry, please. We are enjoying.
This is what we want. The more questions asked, the better. Please ask as many as you want.
Definitely.
We love it.
Yeah, great.
Questions, comments, good. So, yeah, what were you saying?
How did you come to that conclusion? Have you asked that kind of question?
Yeah, I try, and I just basically got the answer was, well, because I'm right. And I'm like, oh, all right, and that's when I should have known, just walk away.
Yes, tells you that this person is not really interested in intellectual debate.
Yeah. So, if they are insulting you and be acting like that, you can tell them, hey, look, and actually Radical Love's a moderator on another channel, Vocab's channel. I would assume Radical Love's probably pretty good at this, that you just tell them, hey, look, don't be rude. Don't be insulting. If you're going to do that, I'm not going to talk to you. And just hold them to that. Of course, the frustrating thing is, as Christians, we sort of want to keep trying to help them, and then, of course, as a result, we end up being somebody's whipping boy, and so.
Yeah, we don't. That doesn't really get anywhere.
But no, that's you're asking tons of good questions. Should we be asking their motives? Well, that's a good question. It would depend, Radical Love, on the situation. For instance, you can ask it depending on how you mean that. What I mean is, if I took the person that I'm having an argument with and he's just being increasingly hostile, I might ask, hey, listen, why do you want to have this conversation? So here I'm questioning their motives. And of course, if I get another, snarky, rude answer, then that pretty much tells me, all right, we're done having this conversation. If they're arguing with me and it seems like we're just misunderstanding one another, I might not. That's one where I would sort of try to be careful. I just don't want to trigger somebody because that can be. Some people may just get offended by that. But at the same time, yeah, if they're being incredibly rude or cruel, and in fact, the other gentleman on that same channel, on Eric's channel, said to the guy, I think you're just trolling. He did question his motives. He called him out for that. So, and I thought, yeah, maybe as a last resort, yes. And I thought, oh, why didn't I think of that sooner? Here I am. In fact, Eric wrote me and said, I appreciate you on my channel, but just don't spend too much time on there. Something like that. I went, yeah, oops. He could tell I was on there all day. And I knew better. I honestly did. I just got sucked into it. And that
it's
rarely.
So easy to.
Yeah, rarely ever happens.
Yes.
Any other questions on that note, Radical Love, before I move on to the next topic? If right after a certain amount of time. Yeah. I think if I understand you correctly, yes. Speaking of time, don't be in a rush. One thing that I forget is that I'll take all the sweet time in the world to get somebody to answer a question. If they refuse to answer the question, I won't go forward until they answer the question. And I'll let them know that if they're being hostile. Look, I'm asking this question not because I think you're dumb, because I'm trying to figure out if we're talking about the same thing. I want clarity so I don't falsely represent your position. If you don't clarify your position, I could end up misrepresenting it or misunderstanding you. It may, and I will always try to season it with a little bit of salt, meaning be complimentary and not to patronize them. I'm being genuine. In other words, I'll say, I don't want to insult you because you seem intelligent and I'm enjoying the conversation and you deserve better than that. And so, with that, I will try to make sure, but I will sort of take my time and press them to answer the question. I think all too often where stuff sort of goes wrong in apologetics is when you get somebody who's being a turkey and they don't want to answer the question, and you're asking them and they just refuse to answer the question. And so what do? You move on, or you respond to an ad hominem or a red herring instead. You start going off over in this direction when the conversation was going here. It gets you off track. Yeah, positive reinforcement, Radical Love says. Yes, exactly. And again, and I want to be clear, I'm being genuine when I do that. I want to keep the environment positive. Some people though see that as an opportunity to just be more rude. And again, if they are, yeah, this last one was the case. So yeah, it that can happen too. It just is what it is. So, but yeah, take your time and because if they don't answer some of the questions, if you're asking questions to clarify, what can happen is that that'll end up biting you in the hiney later on down the road. Oh, Nate, take care, brother. Gotta take off. Take care, brother. I'm gonna miss you. So if you think of it this way, that they don't answer, they don't give a definition, and so you launch into a refutation of their position. You go, well, that's not right. Here's where you're wrong. They didn't give the definition. Now they refuse to give the definition. And then what are they going to do? 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back if they're trying to just be, hey, God bless. Oh, that's Radical Love saying that. I thought that was Nate. So, you know, if they, they'll come back later on and do what's called something that's being ad hoc, meaning that they'll claim that that's not what they were saying. Well, I wasn't saying that. Well, why? Oh, I didn't get I never got the definition from you. So it could be your mistake genuinely, or it could be that they're trying to change their position because they never gave a definition. Sometimes though, and I want to be clear, it could be that they're not familiar enough with the topic.
Right.
That happens
happened to me too.
lot.
That happened to me too.
And what happens is people don't want to, backtracking. That's right, Radical Love. And that what happens is they tend to not be versed in the topic, and they see this as a sort of weakness maybe, and they don't want to be perceived as being weak. Rather than just say, well, I'm not sure, they start making stuff up, and that gets frustrating for everybody for obvious reasons, because then when you catch them in it, you know, you sort of, now you're weaving this path. I can generally tell pretty quick because it takes them a few minutes to get back to me. Here I am responding instantly to their comments, and then they all of a sudden they're gone for like 5 minutes. They come back and they post something, and then the same thing happens again. And so I start to recognize the pattern there, that, okay, they're just going to their favorite website and looking it up, which again is fine. But the problem is you're not answering them now. You're answering the World Wide Web. And what's worse is they might be grabbing things from over here a little bit, over there a little bit, and they don't even work together, but they don't have a clue. They just assume because they're all Buddhist websites or atheist websites or agnostic websites or whatever, is, you know, Islam websites, that they must all work together, and that's not always the case. And so in the same way, if I went to a doctrinal page from a Baptist church and then a Catholic church and then
little silly, not your own opinion. Right.
A, it's intellectually dishonest, but B, it doesn't fit them because the things don't mesh together. But I'll give an example of this. I thought I wrote the comments down. I was on Vocab's channel, I think this was last week sometime, and there was a person on there, and I won't give the screen name, but just to be polite, but they jumped on and immediately were just bashing Vocab. Vocab's a liar, or something like this. And then so I'm ignoring it, everyone else is, and they said, well, the Bible teaches, what was the statement? The Bible teaches that Isaac married Rebecca when she was 3 and he was 40. And I went, what? And he was like, yeah, you Christians don't know your Bible.
Maybe you're the one who knows.
Yeah, well, you want to say stuff like that. So I'm thinking, all right, can you explain to me why? Well, of course, he wanted to shift the burden of proof. He didn't want to answer that. Well, I know why. It's because, and I say he, could have been a she, I don't know. But the person wouldn't answer, and was being, oh, you remember that? Yes, radicals remember that. Okay, yeah. So, and I basically, if you remember, you'll remember that I kept pressing him, saying, no, give me the answer. Where did you get that from? And it just kept being inflammatory. And finally, I started kind of teasing him back a little bit. Oh, you really don't know, do you? You know. and then about 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden, boop, up pops an answer. Now, what happens is, stupidly, what do? I grab my Bible and I start looking for the references. Well, they've given me five references. We're going from Genesis chapter 20 to like 23 or something like that. I don't remember what all the references were, but I'm going, I can't read all this right now and respond. And of course, now the responses are coming up. Come on, which you can't answer, Christian, kind of thing. And I'm going, Well, I know the assertion is that that
Oh,
Jacob,
dear.
or I'm sorry, Isaac marries Rebecca when he's 40 and she's 3. Well, I already know that's not correct. I know my Old Testament pretty well, and so I think, well, all right. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to pull up Logos here for us. Yep, there it is. Help if I pull.
If that's the best argument they can come up with, it kind of shows their desperation of
Yeah. So
their attempt.
yeah.
Don't you think?
So see here, Radical Love makes a comment. I might not be able to see it. So if you can keep an eye out for here.
Oh, hello,
Oh, hey, Restored Beauty. Hey.
Good to see you.
So the accusation was, I'm glad I opened the window up so we could see.
Yes, we are talking about apologetics, right? Particularly online.
Yeah.
Tricky stuff.
Yeah. So if we look at, I'm going to go to chapter 22, and here's where the incident occurred. The mistake I made was that I didn't read carefully. I was trying to speed read everything, and
he's going, come on,
can't answer it. Yes. And so what happens is the comment, it was, well, and that when I went back and reread it, I caught the error. It says, okay, in chapter 22, all these things happened at the same time. And I went, what? Okay. And so then right away I knew, nope, wrong. So I was able to respond. This has only taken place over about a minute or two, but of course to me it feels like it's forever. I'm going, oh my goodness, how do I respond to this?
The person is rushing you too.
Yeah, and they know they're doing it, and they're doing that as a tactic. And so just remember, take your sweet time. Say, hey, look, you want me to answer you? Give me a second to respond. I'm happy to respond to you, but let me look up the reference you gave me. There's nothing wrong with that. Just let them know. Oh yes, please don't forget to hit like. Thank you, Radical Love.
Thank you.
I was trying to do that, by the way, on Vocab's channel last night. Nobody was listening to me. He had like 97 viewers, and there was like 60 likes. I'm like, hey, don't forget it. Likes. I'm not a moderator, so of course people are like, whatever, just watching that scroll right past. But anyway, yeah. So what the person was doing was they were compressing all of these things into one part of time. Well, once I figured out what they were doing, once I carefully read their comment and I caught what they were saying, that all this happened at one time, I went, nope. So now I was able to respond, look, your timeline's off. Give me just a second. That also then allowed me enough time to read the comment more carefully, where they were cramming together and saying, it appeared that they were saying that Rebecca was actually Abraham and Sarah's daughter. So once again, I said, and it looks like you're saying that this is their daughter. Is that the case? Now, what have I done? I'm asking them a question, which is giving me time to go back and read. So I've already said your timeline's off, and I've asked them another question, and they really didn't respond much after that. It was pretty much crickets, which was hilarious. So here's the mistake. The mistake starts in chapter 22, verse, and you all should be able to see the screen that we're seeing. Roundabout verse, let me see here. Right after Abraham, so they find the ram, verse 13, 14, it appears, and here the angel of the Lord shows up, and what does it say? By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. Now wait a minute, this is the angel. So Abraham says the Lord will provide, and it is said to this day, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn. Now, here's the deal, right? That the angel of the Lord isn't going to swear by himself. In other words, who is the angel of the Lord? It's Jesus. How do you know that? Because an angel of God, if it was just a mere angel, isn't going to swear by himself unless he wants a very short existence. Okay, not going to do that. And because and the angel of the Lord swears by himself and declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. The angel of the Lord doesn't bless, a mere angel doesn't bless anyone. God does. So who is this angel of the Lord? It's Jesus. And I will surely multiply your offspring again. Angels can't do that. Only God can. As the stars of the heaven. So we get the promise here, right? And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. Now, after these things, it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah has also borne children to your brother Nahor. So already it can't be all happening at the same time, because the language in verse 20 says, after these things. So now Milcah has a child. Uz is his firstborn. Buz is his brother. Kemuel is the father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. My kids always make fun of me because I never read these right. Bethuel fathered Rebekah. Once again, we have another problem. If this all happened at the same time, how could this possibly be? Because the father of Rebekah is the one that's been born during this time period, not Rebekah herself, which would mean that you've got a problem here. That you've got the father of Rebekah and Rebekah being born at the same time.
If you literally
take what they're saying,
suppose in the side
right?
looks like, so it doesn't really make sense.
Right. So these 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abram's brother. Moreover, his concubine, whose name was Rima, bore Teba, Gam, Tash, and Macha. Sorry, folks, my Hebrew is abysmal. Yeah, it's not very good. My Greek's much better, but my Hebrew's bad. Yeah. So here's the deal: is that and then it goes on. Now, where this thing comes from is from a rabbinic tradition, which tries to say that all these things happened at once, and that Isaac was 40, and again, Sarah is I'm sorry, not Sarah. Ooh, that would be bad. That Rebecca is 3, but of course that can't even be the case, because it would mean that Isaac would have to also have been 40 when he was being sacrificed. So none of it makes any sense. When you continue to read, you can go on. Hey, Ashley, when you continue to read, what happens, okay, is that I'm trying to think how to put this. I'll give you guys the short synopsis. I think most of you ladies are familiar with this, okay? But if you remember what happens next, Sarah passes away, and after Sarah passes away, Abram sends his servant to go find a wife for his son Isaac. Well, so the servant, I'm compressing some time here. So the servant goes out, looks for it, and sorry, I'm reading some of the comments.
We have to catch up.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, we're trying to catch up. Sorry, everybody. Hey, Ashley. Sorry. So anyway, yeah, it's a compression of time. I'll get to reading all of them in a second. But what occurs here is that essentially, you remember the servant goes, and what does he decide? He decides, oh, this young lady over here is beautiful. If she's the one, and he prays to God, please make it so that the right one, I think, is actually the correct prayer, waters all the camels. So if here's the irony, if Rebecca is 3 years old, I'd like to know what 3-year-old is able to go and fetch water for, I don't remember how many camels it was, but quite a few.
I don't know how many it was, but she had to be there.
And has all these conversations that continue to take place.
Like me to give water to your camel too.
Right. So scripturally, this doesn't make any sense that she's only 3. Biblically, it doesn't make any sense. Or I'm sorry, logically, it doesn't make any sense either. Okay, it just doesn't hold to compress all those into one time. Thankfully, at the time when it occurred, I was able to say your timeline doesn't add up. When I figured it out, I said, do you have anything else that doesn't? Right, radical love. Yeah, how can she give water until they are full? Can you imagine a 3-year-old trying to get? Yeah, that she wouldn't be able to get the water out of the well, and yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
But there are so many stories like that that people seem to be making up,
And what's even worse is, once I refuted that, my response was, well, where's your answer? Do you have anything that's not based on rabbinic tradition? Because then I was able to go look up where in the world this even came from. I've heard it before, folks, but like most of us, when you get up there in age, you start to forget things, and or you don't hear them. They sort of get recycled. Right, and that's exactly right. How would she be old enough to decide if she want to go with his servant? Radical Love says, and so.
Brady.
Yeah.
Scratching himself in the book.
Actually, I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Could you elaborate a little bit? I see the gaslighting thing. I'm not sure to what you're referring to for referring to people in third person. So anyway, the issue was that it was just ridiculous. So at any rate, the harassment stopped, and they were on to other things. But red herrings. Which red herrings, Ashley? Yeah, yeah. Try to stay on topic, Ashley. It's okay if you have questions or whatnot. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to quiet you down or something there, okay? By muting your comments. I don't want to do that because you're welcome to talk, but you have to be clear on what it is you're talking about. All right. So anyway, back to what we're talking about. The deal here would be that when you run into something like that, just ask for clarification. It can certainly help. Okay, Ashley, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we're going to start by putting Ashley in timeout, and then we'll continue on. I don't want to embarrass her, and I know what she's talking about now, but it's only going to embarrass Ashley. So because of that, I'm going to try to be polite and just put her in timeout for about 300 seconds and hope that helps her out. So anyway, okay. Radical Love, any other questions on or Restore Beauty? Any other questions on anything about what we've been talking about? Because I want to try to stay on topic there. And let us know. Did you have anything you wanted to add on the topic itself?
Of this apologetics online. Well, I think I have been interested in listening to what you've been experiencing recently because I have been trying to respond with video now. So you are more on, you have more of a recent encounters.
Well, I was talking to mostly about the one with on Vocab's channel. That one was pretty short. I mean, the gentleman was being extremely rude. He was calling Vocab a racist and other stuff, and I was like, come on, man, completely unsupported. And
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to ask everybody here. Well, Radical Love, I'm sure, does a lot of this kind of things because she or he moderates online, right? I wanted to ask if they had any interesting thing or if they had questions, and I'm sure that you already know, but I think it's really important not to take it personally, especially online.
Yep. I know Vocab's
it's so easy to take it personally.
Yeah, I know Vocab's going to be going live in a minute here, so I'm sure everyone's going to want to be getting over that anyway. But anyway, yeah, it's if there's any other questions, hit us up, folks. I just wanted to cover those basic topics too, and it's unfortunate when you get, and here I'm not talking about Ashley. I actually feel bad for her. She's got some issues, and yeah, I don't want her to feel bad. But online when you get into these chats with on Vocab's channel and some of these other things that you end up getting folks that just want to be as harsh and rude as they possibly can. Yep. Definitely do. Okay. I'm going to give it one more second. If there's no other questions, we will head on over. I'm going to head on over to Vocab's. We've been on for an hour anyway.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Okay, is that awesome?
Yep. So, and again, folks, it's not that we don't like Ashley. We really do love her. It's just that I don't. What's going to happen is if I have to explain why I haven't been responding to her, I don't want her to be embarrassed because she's actually got issues that I don't want to have to talk about on here. And it's not being mean to her. I'm not worried about that. She that wouldn't warrant that kind of behavior. It's just I'd feel bad. So that's all that is. So anyway, all right. Well, hey everybody, God bless, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon. I don't know. I will probably do the next live stream again next week, and then yeah, I will. We've got a video coming up. Oh, I'm glad, Radical Love.
Yes, I'm editing one right now. That's going to be up soon, hopefully.
That one will be up soon, and we will get it cracking. And I will try to do some more academic things here pretty soon, rather than just sort of light-hearted stuff. Yeah, we wish you were near us too, Radical Love. Honestly, and listen, and if y'all do need stuff, I mean, this goes for Ashley. You can email us. It's just that I don't want to, you know, be discussing people's personal stuff in the chat there. So anyway, at least not on that level. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, hey, God bless. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Love y'all. Out of here.